Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore-Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another
Oladipo!
one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. It is Thursday, and joined by our good friend Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. He is not wearing his traditional yellow today. It's a traditional orange, so if he looks different, it's the orange. That's what it is. Not completely, though. It's I can't lie. I look up there, and it's hello, a little different look.
It's a slightly different look. I wore the orange. You know, we got the Sweet 16 tonight. I got this bald around basketball head. So I really just got in the mood of March Madness, I think was the that's the theme for today.
Yeah, if you'd have shaved it completely and with that orange, you could look like a pumpkin like the basketball.
I did do that one time when I was little. The Pacers were in the playoffs. Shaved my head completely and we painted a basketball on it. It was the year that they almost beat the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I have done that before.
Oh, all right, back on board. Forrest is in, said he just got back to Georgia. Larry is on there as well. Ross. Everyone wants to talk about something that happened in Bloomington yesterday. What could that be? Yes, there has been a change at the guard. Changing of the guard at on the IU basketball staff, and one that's a little surprising probably to most people. Dane Fife, who was brought in at with great fanfare, and now he is not going to be coming back with the team. Lots of rumors, of course, yada yada. It's all about, but even all the rumors are all about friction. And what he said, it just wasn't a good fit. But without direct inside knowledge and just the typical that everybody else has as well, it's the same thing that I've been hearing, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And but the big thing is I there's probably some things that he was I don't know. I don't know what it's all about. If it's all there's too many until I get the direct story. There's no point in speculating.
Right. And and Mike Woodson wouldn't just make a change just to make a change, right? Something wasn't right. What it was, we don't know. But we all thought back when he was brought in that basically Mike Woodson was going to coach these next 5-6 years, and then it was going to be the changing of the guard. At least that was my thought, because a lot of people thought that Dane Fife wanted to be the head coach at Indiana, but that's not going to be the case now, obviously. So it's going to be interesting.
No, but I also said that I don't think that Dane had been guaranteed the head spot. I mean, I know that everyone thought that, but I did not know, because if that had been the case, I think it might have been a different person in that position. That's why I did not think he was guaranteed that spot. I don't think he had been offered that as a guarantee.
But I don't know that there was a guarantee, but that's what I thought would be kind of a succession plan. Because
everyone did.
Other jobs pop up, other things happen. He had been at Michigan State for so long, it seemed odd that he was going to leave at that time. And for Mike Woodson, I can't remember how old he is, but to have a 6-year deal, it didn't seem like he would go probably much further than that. So when you connected the dots, that's what I thought. I didn't think there was a guarantee or necessarily a conversation where, hey, if you do this, come in and be our assistant coach for 6 years, you're going to be the next head coach. I didn't think that was the case. I just thought that there was some sort of broad-based plan where this will be our succession plan for the next 10 years or whatever the case might have been. But clearly that wasn't the case at all. So you were more right than me.
I don't know about that. It's not about being racist, but now who will they bring in as a replacement? That's
Question.
That's the next question. Of course, everyone's going to be stuck on why, and you can't go by. I can say this: you can't go by the rumors because they're rampant. Man, I don't know how many messages I got. What happened to Dave? I'm like,
Your guess
listen
is
to the
as good as
show.
mine.
Well, not exactly, but this is something you don't usually see. A former coach or a former player brought in a great fanfare, but I will say this wasn't Woody's pick. I don't think that Woody picked day night out. I think that this was part of Scott Dolson's makeover. I've seen the question already asked if Thad Matta could replace. No. Thad Matta is not physically able to do much. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what Thad Matta's role really is. No, I'm serious. I don't mean it in a bad way, but I really wonder what it is, because there were some. I have questions about the season. There wasn't a lot of player development. There was not a lot of adjustments going on in game. There was not a lot of changes that happened throughout the season that was different from the beginning. The lineups didn't change, and while it was a better situation with better players, there were still things that they could have done and won more games.
So, I mean, I don't know what my thought is. Thad Matta's purpose of being there is strictly for recruiting, to help Mike Woodson along the way in that regard, and how to go about that. Because when you've never done it, it's a brand new world. I mean, that's 24/7, 365, whether you're in season, out of season, it doesn't matter. I don't know what his job is supposed to be. I mean, technically speaking, in terms
he's got a staff of
of
assistant coaches that are quite adept at recruiting. I mean, Dane Fife had.
Yeah, but Thad's done it from the head coaching perspective. Those other guys, well, I guess Dane Fife did for a little bit when he was at IPFW, but to me, that was the sole purpose of bringing in a guy like Thad Matta to guide him. I think you're right. I think that the staff was brought in. When you look at Mike Woodson, I don't know whether Mike Woodson, made the decision to hire some of these guys or not. But when you look at how that staff was assembled, you had some guys that were previously on staff. You bring in Thad Matta, who was a seasoned head coach. You bring in Dane Fife, who was a former Indiana player who had years of experience coaching in the Big Ten and at Michigan State. I think that was a good first-year staff. Because you have to when you haven't been coaching in college and you've been in the NBA, it's a completely different world. It's a completely different game. So I think in that regard, they did a good job. Now Mike Woodson knows I'm not going to be able to win at the level I want. Well, he must think I'm not going to be able to win at the level I want with this staff, so I'm going to have to make a change. And I think that's ultimately what happened, without getting into the nitty-gritty details of what happened, because that's not something I'm aware of or anything I know. But I just think that their big picture, I need a different guy on this staff to help me along so we can get Indiana back to the Final Four, basically.
Jennifer would have preferred Michael Lewis over Fife. Tony says not very likely Lewis is showing up either. He wasn't given an interview last year. Well, part of the reason why he didn't get an interview probably was because UCLA won right up until the Final Four. Right. And I'll be quite honest with you, that's part of what probably drug that out last year, was waiting to try to get to Michael. But I will say this, Michael Lewis told me personally he would not leave UCLA for anything other than a head coaching position. And this is exactly why he would have made the smart move. I mean, yep. Dane left a position of 9 years of an assistant at Michigan State, and now after 1 year, he's out of a job. Not that he will be out of a job if he doesn't want to be, but he relocated his family. There was just so much about that. The girls, I hate that for him. I hate it. I hate to see it for him. He's a good guy, but it is what it is. So now Indiana has to move on. And I'm wondering, do they bring in another quote unquote IU guy, or is Mike Woodson going to be the IU guy on the staff? There are people out there. What about our buddy Keith Smart, who's down in Arkansas?
That could happen. I don't know. I mean, I don't think
that would be a move up for him.
I don't think you need an IU guy.
I don't think you need one either. I don't think you have to have one either. This is all about recruiting now. It's all about, because there's not a player out there really that gives a crap about what happened at IU 30 years. They don't know because they weren't born. They don't give a crap. This is all about the IU guy thing. It's all about the fans. Let's just be honest.
It was about fans and I'm guessing donor money too, a little to some extent, because when you go through a coaching change, look, I'm going to be honest. At first I didn't think the Mike Woodson hire was a good hire, and I'm not alone in thinking that. There were a lot of people that weren't on board with that.
Are you sold that it's a good hire?
I guess it depends on how you were going to say good hire. Do I think that Indiana can consistently be a top 5 team in the Big Ten and consistently make the NCAA tournament? Yes. Do I think they're going to be a national powerhouse? No. So it depends on how you define good program. I think it's a big step up from where they were. But if you get the program back to where it was when it was competing for Big Ten championships, then you can take that next step. Then you can find the coach that can take you to that next level. I don't think Mike Woodson was a bad hire. I think it's hard to know right now because there was such a lack of development for 4 years. And I understand that this year there wasn't necessarily that big step in development that you wanted to see. But Trace Jackson Davis, that was the best we'd seen him play, maybe in his career, that stretch from the Big Ten tournament through the NCAA tournament. Can you remember a better stretch that he played?
Nope.
And then you look at Rob Finney and the contributions he had in that Purdue game. I think you saw at least slightly more development, or guys at least taking on. Xavier Johnson at the end of the season, he came on strong. I think it just took some time for this team to kind of gel together and realize we got to get it in gear or else our season's going to be over. We'll see. I think that next year is going to be very telling as to how Indiana is projected the next 4 or 5 years. That's just my thought.
I agree. I think it was a hire that definitely moved Indiana forward. Took them out of a dark period and moved them forward. They definitely progressed. And definitely move forward. This is a Band-Aid though. This is not the long term of Indiana basketball. I think that this is a Band-Aid move, and I think that the next hire is going to be the one that matters. But this one means a lot because it's getting them back to a position of recognition. If by bringing in these recruiting classes, we'll have to see when they get these recruiting classes in, when they get the talent. If they're winning, they're winning. Not having seasons like last season where they lost games and they absolutely just simply shouldn't have lost. And I'll be honest with you, part of that was coaching. There were some of those games lost because of coaching. I know it's time we got to take a break. I don't want to get too far behind. Let's do that before we do. Hey, don't forget our friends at the WOW Network, Southern Stone, Cabello, the Allery, Feast Market and Celery, the Courtroom in Bedford, BB's Marketplace, all kinds of places in and around Bloomington. Make sure you get your WOW card. You can do that at your app store. Just go in, whether it's Google or Apple, and get my wild card. We're back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting Bloomington.
What's up, Keegan?
How we doing?
We are doing Jim, if you can hear me, we don't have DJ, by the way, today. He's skipping this week. I don't mean like he's just not coming on, but he evidently has a reason he can't be on.
How's it going, Keegan?
It's going good. What time? I had a 10 o'clock workout last night, and I think I went to bed at like 1.
Nice.
So,
That's okay. I make that. I live by myself too. I make that dumbass decision, and then I'm like, I got all that adrenaline flowing through me, and I can't get to sleep.
yeah, you should have seen me last night when I got home, just Googling information and possible hires for Indiana basketball to replace Dane Fife.
Oh, really?
And a lot of people are speculating too that Yasir Rosemond will go down to join Kenny Payne's staff down in Louisville.
Yeah.
Now, obviously,
Yeah.
that's hearsay, but that's another thing that could happen in the next couple of weeks. You never know.
And I didn't know that Kenny Payne and Woodson coached together
At the Knicks.
or when it was, but it was somewhere.
Well, like maybe not at the same time, but they were both Knicks assistants and they got hired,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Should I go hat? Show everybody.
Rams.
Oh boy.
I'm going
I
hat.
forgot you were a Rams fan. I thought you were a
Yeah.
Bengals fan. I know you're a UC fan, so I thought you were a
Oh, yeah.
Bengals fan.
Bengals broke my heart, and it wasn't good for my mental health. So
You're not a Reds fan too, are you?
no, I am.
Oh. A lot of people down here in Kentucky adopt the Cincinnati pro teams for some reason.
It's because you don't have any proteins.
But you
right?
also have a healthy split between Colts fans and Bengals fans, Pacers fans. I guess you don't really have a competitor for the Pacers around here, but
You got to remember too, the Colts didn't come to Indianapolis till wasn't it the 80s?
yeah, it's just
84.
my grandpa was a Cowboys
So,
fan before the
a lot
Colts
of-
came to Indianapolis.
A lot of people in Indiana, when I grew up, they were mostly Bears fans, and then there was a spattering of like Lions and Browns fans because Indiana didn't have a team.
All right, here we go.
John, the producer with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're now a part of the Rivals Network. TheHoosier.com is where you can find complete coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and plenty more. Simply go to TheHoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. NCAA returns tonight. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition is with me. Keegan Nickoson from thehoosier.com, Indiana Rivals, joins me. The NCAA returns tonight, of course, but most people are around here are wondering about the coaching change for Indiana basketball. Keegan, welcome aboard.
How are we doing? Good morning.
A little bit of a surprise in the coaching change for Indiana with Dane Fife. I'm not going to make too big of a deal out of it because it is what it is, and that's what it's going to be. Nothing's going to change. So, and rumors and all that stuff, they're going to float around a why, and it doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't click between those two, and the thing is, and I'm not surprised, is because it wasn't Woody's choice. And I'm not saying that about Dane. I'm just saying Woody didn't hire Dane. Scott Dolson basically hired Dane.
Gotcha.
So that's and to be truthful, none of his assistant coaches, the other two were already in place.
Mm-hmm.
So he did not put a staff together. He didn't hire Thad Matta. Indiana hired Thad Matta. So he didn't really know how to put a college staff together, I don't think, is why this happened. And then that kind of led over to some of the coaching things that went on. But as far as a replacement, that's going to be the next question. And the thing is, I think it needs to be someone who has a ton of college experience, because whether Woody wants to admit it or not, he needs help coaching the college game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a different game, and I don't know that he has acclimated himself to that yet from a strategic standpoint and whatnot. But there we go.
Yeah, he talked about it, and some of his media availability, I can't remember if it was post-game or during the week, but it was near the end of the season, just how much his assistant coaches have helped him, like during the game and managing games. And he mentioned Fife, and it was talking about how he manages timeouts, because during the season, it was obvious that he did not know how to manage his timeouts. He was using too much of them. He was letting people go on runs. So it's going to be very interesting. But is Kenya Hunter being elevated just out of the question? Like, that's not a possibility?
Well, say it again.
Kenya Hunter being elevated?
Oh, I expect. I would be almost surprised if he wasn't elevated in order to keep him from that 2 spot, from the 3 spot to the 2 spot. Here's basically what it was. Dane Fife was the number 1 assistant, Kenya Hunter number 2, and Yasir Rosemont number 3. I'm thinking both of those guys get elevated to keep both of them, because Kenya Hunter, he's would be welcome anywhere. He's a great recruiter. He's got a lot of coaching experience. And then Coach Ya, like John mentioned, friends with and experience with Kenny Payne in Louisville. But why the hell would he want to go to Louisville? That's a mess to me. I mean, I'm serious. Why would anybody want to go to Louisville? It's just going to be a mess. They're still going to be hit with NCAA sanctions. And you have no idea what that's going to be. And you've been through yet another head coach there. They've been through 2, 3, if you want to count the interim, head coaches in just the last couple of seasons. So I don't know that he would leave to go down there, to be honest with you, especially if Indiana is on an upward trajectory, if he feels it's on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, I would definitely expect him to stay. I think he has a lot to do with recruiting, and I think he's gotten a lot of these kids in, like Schifino and Cups and Newton. So I think the fallout, if he did leave, might be bigger than people could expect. But I don't know why he would go to Louisville either, in all honesty. That just seems like it's going to take a while before they kind of get back to balance. And Indiana, like you've talked about, this is a progress year, and they're on the up and up.
And as far as a replacement, that's going to be, I mentioned earlier, I don't think they need to do the IU thing. They just need to do the winning thing. Get the players that are going to win games for you, Dustin. I mean, it's just all about winning. You should be able to recruit the state of Indiana just by winning. If you're winning, they will come. I promise you. But you don't have to have every kid from the state of Indiana. You don't have to have a roster like Purdue's. Yeah, it would be great, but that's not the case, because the best at every position does not come from the state of Indiana. Indiana produces some great talent, especially per capita. But you get the best of the state, and then you get the others, like Jalen Hood Schifino, those types. And I think that has to continue, but they have to have the ability to recruit the state of Indiana as well. And they're kind of at a loss right now with that, it seems.
Well, I've never thought Indiana's recruiting, you and I are going to disagree on this. I've never thought Indiana's recruiting has been an issue. It's the lack of development. Now you can talk about the type of players Indiana got in, and maybe it's not the same caliber as guys that are going to, Gonzaga or Kentucky or some of those other programs. But in terms of, you look at, again, I've mentioned this, particularly last year, when you look at Indiana's roster top to bottom and Purdue's roster top to bottom, Indiana's was better. Now that's probably not the case this year, but last year it was absolutely better. And you couldn't find ways to beat a lot of those teams. I thought that they had a top 5 roster in the Big Ten, and you still couldn't get into the NCAA tournament. You still finished the Big Ten regular season with a losing record. So I don't think recruiting's been an issue. And you don't have to get the idea that you have to recruit the state of Indiana it's a big deal because there's a lot of talented players here, but that's also an older mentality. You just got to go find the best players. And I think Indiana does a good job of that. And I think that there's a lot of appeal to play for a guy like Mike Woodson. And if you get the right assistant coaches in there, to me, the assistant coaches in college basketball, this is going to sound bad, but to me, there are very few who make an actual in-game coaching difference. There are some you can tell that they might have a coach might have an offensive and a defensive coordinator, something like that. But you've got to get the guy who's got experience on the recruiting trail, because that's the biggest. Without Mike Woodson having that long experience, still just 1 year in, you've got to have those assistant coaches who know the recruiting trail, know how to pitch, know how to go into somebody's home and persuade guys to come in. And I think that's what Indiana needs to look for more than an X's and O's. But I do understand where Keegan's coming from with the timeout situation and letting teams go on runs and just kind of the little things that are different between the NBA game and the college game. You do have to have some knowledge of the game, obviously, but to me, recruiting is the bigger deal than anything else.
Yeah, because after we've got one season in the books and we'll have after another season, but we'll see, are those differences changed? Is that mass substitution thing, we thought that had gone away already because it had already proved that it was not working out too well, but they continued that a few times. Michael comments, if you want an IU guy, which I don't think it's necessary, but how about AJ Moye as far as player development? Now that's different. He has been doing nothing but working on player development. He runs the Mamba Academy out there in Los Angeles, and that's what he does, player development. Or someone like Charlie Miller, player development. This staff doesn't have someone who works on player development, it seems. And we didn't see much of that throughout the season yet again, Keegan.
Yeah, I think a big thing about player development is I think that's what Woody talked about when he first got here, because he talked about teaching them fundamentals and how these kids came up not knowing fundamentals and they were coached differently than he was. So I think Woody has kind of a big hand in developing these guys and just making sure that they can play the game the right way. But in terms of kind of replacements, I know Brian Walsh, I think he's one of the team coordinators. I know he said he was on hopefully the path to become a head coach. He's really involved in like the kind of game management, I guess. You could see him really passionately on the sidelines, just one of those head coaches kind of yelling. So
my fear is that he's learned under Archie Miller. His development has come under Archie Miller and the one season under Mike Woodson.
Then why is he on staff?
Same reason everyone else. Not the two assistant coaches came from Archie Miller. It was a lack. That was a lack to me. It's a lack of having
Yasir Rosemond. Can you clarify? Yasir Rosemond was not on Archie's staff. You said that earlier. He was not on Archie's staff.
My bad. I thought he was on there the last year.
Kenya Hunter was the only one retained.
Was he? Okay. I thought Yasir was on that last season, but thank you for that correction. Yasir was not on Archie's last staff.
Well, okay, here's where I want to go with the development aspect of this. A lot of that happens throughout the course of a season, you're not going to see a player develop. That's about when you build your team, right? Like The development happens in the offseason. So is it possible that we didn't see that kind of development because, again, this is Mike Woodson's first year. He gets hired, and then all of a sudden, I mean, you have to do recruiting. There's a lot of stuff he's got to learn on the fly. So to me, that's why I think you'll find out how good of a coach Mike Woodson is and how much he places an emphasis on development this offseason, because now he's kind of in a groove. He knows a lot better now what he needs to do on the recruiting trail, how to develop players, what the rules are and what they aren't in the NCAA, all that good stuff. To me, I think you might see more of that development side this year. And I know there's going to be a lot of moving parts with guys leaving, graduating, transferring, what have you. But I think this year is when you're going to see how good of a developer he is. And I don't know the answer to that question. I just think you'll find out more this year than you will last year because, as Jim said, you spent 3-4 years under Archie Miller where there was clearly no development. That's hard to fix in a pretty short offseason for him.
Yeah, and I feel like, Jim, as someone who lives in Indiana and who is around Indiana fans and knows kind of the vibes, how many years do you give it until you start questioning whether Woodson was the right guy and maybe they should find someone else?
Well, I don't give it any time because that's my job. I immediately start questioning.
I know, but in terms of getting his recruiting classes in,
but from a fan standpoint, they have to wait. They've got to wait 3 years.
Okay, that's what I was thinking because I mean, Archie had all those years and he got his guys and never reached the NCAA tournament, and I think counting correctly that Woodson had 5 of his guys and they were transfers.
Yeah,
and he got back there. So you see this trending upward, and when he gets his guys and he can court a lineup that can make shots, actually, and I mean that's one thing that you can't really develop the ability to shoot a basketball.
You also have to look at how many games this year that they lost that they shouldn't have lost. So, I mean, legitimately should not have lost. I'm not talking about all of them. I'm just talking about a handful that you just absolutely should not have lost. And that puts them even further ahead of where they were last year, which they're already ahead. But this would have put them even further ahead. And then you add in what you're saying. When you get Jalen Hood-Schifino in here, when you get CJ Gunn in here, those guys, that is going to make a difference. And this team is going to be better next year than it was this year. I believe that.
I'm going to chime in here. I don't think it matters. Legitimately, hear me out, because so many of those players are going to be gone from this team. What does it? It's not like this entire team's going to be returning. So what does it matter? You got back to the NCAA tournament. You won some games in the Big Ten tournament. You were back on the national spotlight. You finally beat Purdue. You beat a good Ohio State team. They beat the Big Ten champs in Illinois. They have some signature wins on their resume. You can tell the program's trending up. Does it really matter whether they were beaten in the first round or the Sweet 16?
Not to the most people, no. And speaking of guys, Christian Lander in the transfer portal, not a shock there. There has to be 3 people to go, and Parker Stewart, I expect to be one of those. He went through senior ceremonies. I don't expect to see him back. And I'll be honest with you, I do not expect to see Race Thompson back. He went through senior ceremonies for a reason. I just don't think he wants to come back and think he's played enough. I think he's done. Someone I do expect back, and I keep saying this, I think Trace Jackson Davis is 70. I bet you it's 75% that he comes back. Excuse me.
And what's your thinking?
How about that? Because Hoosiers for Good, the new NIL consortium that basically is Indiana's NIL arm, will make a deal good enough to keep him, because where is he going to go right now? He just doesn't. He's not on the NBA draft boards of where it matters. He's not on anybody's first round draft board, and he's at the bottom of the second rounders. That's a very precarious place to be because you get one shot at that. And That's why I think he comes back.
So, on that thinking, why would Race leave? Because Race isn't gonna get drafted.
Because maybe they think they can go get someone even better than him. Maybe I don't know. That's the one thing is I think that they think they could get someone better to fill in, which that's not the only position. If that was the thinking that I would be thinking about, I get it. But he's not the only one I think that should leave, but what I think is irrelevant.
Well, according to the message boards with all the fans who have sources, Geronimo's transferring too.
Well, so. That means a lot to me.
Do you? I mean, what's going to be interesting to me is because Trace Jackson Davis is going to declare for the NBA draft. He's going to test the waters and get get the evaluation, as he should. I think most players should do that.
Well, you almost have to.
My question is, though, based on the momentum that he had at the end of the season, and we can talk about the things he still needs to develop, a jump shot, going to his offhand, that kind of stuff, being able to defend around the perimeter. But does he carry some of that momentum in? Does it help his?
None of those things you just said changed. None of those things you just said changed with that momentum.
But I don't know that it's going to change if he comes back to Indiana.
Well, then he's not going to play. He's not going to get drafted. That's the thing. If you don't have the talent or the potential to have that talent, there's somebody else that does.
Yeah, but now he's probably got a better shot than he did before to get selected.
I get it, but just having a better shot does not give you a shot.
I do think that if he comes back to Indiana next year, that he would start trying to incorporate those free throw line range jumpers into his game. Because I mean, he looked pretty comfortable doing it in the Big Ten tournament, and he made one, and like everyone went insane. And then he shot another one the next game and missed it. But I mean, if he can do that and at least show that he's decent at it, that just opens everything else up for him, and it adds another layer to his game, and it gets him paid a lot more money. So,
Kenneth says he doesn't think Rosemont jumped ship after 1 year. Besides, he thought he saw somewhere that Louisville's coach had other coaches he wanted before Rosemont.
I don't know who I would want before him.
Cimatori says it's impossible to know yet if Woody was a good hire or not. That fact alone is disappointing to some degree. His confidence level has only waned with time.
Okay, I'm going to chime in on this. Okay, I'm about half fired up today, apparently, for some reason.
Good. A little spicy shooty.
Okay, but here's the thing. Look at, you don't know this stuff after 2 or 3, even sometimes 2 or 3 years. Look at Kevin Ollie. He led UConn to a national championship was it his first or second season? I can never remember. First or second season, and then they were god-awful after that. So you can't say you're disappointed in whether or not you know he's a good coach, because there's so many factors that go into this. You have to almost look at it like Keegan said, like you said, 3 to 5 years to take that sample size, because you might inherit a great team, you might inherit a terrible team. There's so many different factors involved here. So,
but see, the thing is, today it's different. Now you can take a team like Iowa State that was 2-22 a year ago, and this year they're in the Sweet 16.
I understand that.
And they were the same seed as Indiana.
That would have never happened 5 years ago, much less 10 years ago, much less 50. That would not have happened 5 years ago. But that's what can happen now with the transfer portal. You can take a 2-22 team and turn them into a Sweet 16 team. That's why, no, it doesn't take longer than 3 years. You know or you don't. I mean, it's either moving in the right direction or it's not. And you can either get players in or you can't. And you can either use them or you can't. It's going to be – it will not take more than 2 more seasons to see this.
Yeah, but you can't do that when you hire a guy like Mike Woodson. If you're Scott Dolson, you have to know, look, he's coming from a 20-plus year – I think it was 20-plus years – in the NBA. Like, he's not going to be acclimated after 1 or 2 seasons. And the fact that you're going to rush him out of here after 2 seasons.
How long did you expect Mike Woodson to be in the position of head coach at Indiana? Really? Most
7,
people did not
8 years.
Really? Right. That's longer than most people had thought to hear. I mean, most people thought he would be the head coach 4 or 5 years. like a transition period. If it's going to take him 3 years to get acclimated and it was only going to be there 4 or 5, man,
but here's the thing.
That's a lot of wasted time. Why not just acclimate into the guy you're going to hire next?
But you're also acting like Indiana is going to get the next head. They've thought they've had the next national championship head coach the last 5 hires.
Oh, I'm not saying
there's no guarantee out there. So why wouldn't you ride this? He's already shown development through 1 year. Why would you not ride this for 3 to 5 years and see? I mean, probably more than 3 years.
I'm not saying otherwise. I'm not saying
4 to 5 years. I just I don't understand this mindset that you're going to hire the next national championship. It's the same thing with Nebraska football. They went out and they got Scott Frost. They kept him because the program looks like it's heading in a positive direction. Yeah, they went 3-9, but they were within 1 possession games. Like, this is not the idea that Indiana and Kentucky and all these schools can get the top head coach and then immediately win a national championship. That's not happening anymore. It doesn't happen anymore in any sport. So you have to kind of ride the wave a little bit. I agree with your premise that they probably stuck with Tom Crean a little bit too long, because you could tell that while he took them back up to the mountaintop, they were declining his last 3-4 years. So
but they didn't have a choice. But why didn't they have a choice? Because Fred Glass wrote him into a contract that they couldn't get out of because it's too damn high. They had to pay him $8 million to get out of.
That's a different conversation, though.
Oh, don't get me started on that. And then the other $30 million that Indiana lost with Archie Miller. So about $40 million right there in bad coaching decisions. And that's another reason why when we come back, we can talk about daggone it. I could see his name right in my head right now. The Houston's coach, Kelvin Sampson. I'm so tired of hearing about people complain about him. You know what? He's not why Indiana is where they are. Indiana is where they are because of Indiana, period.
No one can have nice things unless Indiana has nice things. You didn't know that?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, stop. My God, it's been, how long ago? 14 years now?
Yeah. He's been at Houston for a while.
And that's why Indiana's in this position? Because it's that 14 years ago? No. It's the crap. It's the $40 million in bull crap coaches you paid since then. That is the problem. And I'm not talking about now. So chill out. But we got to take a break, man. You guys got me all fired up. Keegan Nickoson, make sure you give him a follow at thehoosier.com. Indiana Rivals. Thanks, sir. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Always.
Hey, we're back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda Bloomington. Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer, #1 for a reason. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. We're back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
An Evansville tradition.
Thanks, Keegan.
Always. That was fun.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was very. Even watching from the green room was
very entertaining.
My gosh!
Look at this. It's like we're on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, with this many people in here right now. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go back to bed, so I will see you later.
All right. Sounds good, man.
Yeah.
Morning, Kyle.
Morning.
As you can imagine, they were talking about Dane Fife and is Mike Woodson the right guy? And my goodness, that got pretty.
We just yelled at each other for like 20 minutes.
What was the vibe, or what was the consensus?
I don't think there was a consensus.
We talked about so many different things. I don't even remember what argument I took for most of it, to be quite
Indiana
honest.
basketball offseason, and Dustin, I'm sure you would agree with me on this, is the exact same as Nebraska football offseason. It makes no sense. Everyone screams and yells about what's wrong, and nothing gets accomplished.
Okay. Here's what I would say they're both very passionate. What I would say is Nebraska's much more optimistic about the next season than Indiana. As soon as the offseason hits, they find out ways to tally up 10 to 11, 12 wins. Indiana seems like it's a much more pessimistic outlook.
Well, you said 12 wins, like they're going to go undefeated. That's
but I'm serious. Look, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Look, I'm more of an optimistic writer. So every time the offseason hits, I always look at
that's why they love you so
14
much.
14 Big Ten teams are going to go bowling this year. Incredible.
Well, I've lived in Nebraska, and I can attest to that. That's I mean, the if you read the local media, you'd think they're going to be undefeated every year. Once the offseason hits, it's the silly season.
Exactly.
That is hilarious.
Which, by the way, seems like a more pleasant way to enjoy the offseason than thinking your team's going to suck. So.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But it also leads to greater heartache. Heartache, I tell you.
It does. I never understood. 45. I do not ever understand, though, the fans that are just so pessimistic throughout the course of the season. I'm like, that if it drives you that insane, then why are you watching?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. Like, there's a fatalist, like woe is me that they almost enjoy. You know, it's there's something about that I think is real. Like, you know, everything's wrong. You know, it's almost like looking for what's going to go wrong is like almost what they're looking forward to. You know,
right?
I don't know if it's a social media thing or
10
what.
seconds.
Could be.
Here we go.
With AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by BB's Market in Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Joined by my good friend Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, as always. And now Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Kyle, how you doing, brother?
Hey, good. How are you guys?
Oh, great, man. Picked a great one here today to get in on. Of course, lots of talk going on about Indiana and their coaching situation. Seems like a yearly thing now.
I feel like I missed out. I should have been listening earlier. What's your feel, Jim?
Well, if I start talking, it's going to be purely speculative because it's all that. But that's what I do half the time, right? No, I just think that there was a strong collegiate influence from Dane Fife and versus the other way, and there was just too much that probably did not go together, apparently. But that's just the easiest way to say it. And it's about having more. It's probably more about having your own guys. Mike didn't hire Dane, and that doesn't make it bad either way. It's just that Tom Izzo hired Dane Fife. Mike Woodson did not. I think that he was basically hired by Scott Dolson. So that makes a difference.
Absolutely.
And I understand. It's Mike Woodson has his style. Whether we know that that's the one that's going to work yet or not, doesn't matter. He has to have the people around him that he feels fits into that and makes it go forward. So it sucks for Dane Fife and his family. They moved out here. They're mostly Michigan people, but that's the nature of this business, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's awkward, I would say, because it is Dane Fife, and that's the thing. He's an IU guy. It's awkward, people have feelings because they know Dane. They know Dane. They feel like they know Dane, and that's if it's any other assistant or somebody who comes in or even Archie Miller, people don't have the connection to him that they would with Dane. So yeah, but in the same vein, I think Mike Woodson needs to get, he needs to be comfortable with whoever he's ultimately the head guy. He's held accountable for whatever happens. So that's the bottom line, whatever issues. And I don't know, what happened exactly, but he needs to get whoever he needs on staff to feel like he can put his best foot forward. Cause ultimately you're always on the clock at IU and certainly, they've made some strides this year, but he needs to take this in whatever direction he needs to take it.
And it's not just coaching, Dustin. You look at recruiting. I'm sure that the recruiting mindset may have been different. Dane may have thought this. Mike may have thought that. And again, speculating. Everything has to be lockstep, man. You guys they have to be in lockstep.
Well, and I think it boils down to one word, right? Trust. I mean, if you don't trust the guy that is on your staff, and it doesn't mean that Dane doesn't know what he's talking about or that he's not a good coach. It's
or
just
not trustworthy or anything like that.
Right, exactly. It's just when you have a rapport with somebody, you're going to probably trust them more. You know somebody, you make that hire, you feel comfortable with them. You're going to have more trust in that person than somebody that was just kind of placed on your staff. And that trickles down. And in the college, in the NBA, it's all about coaching. But when in the college, you have to have trust on the recruiting, on development, on X's and O's, on something as simple as what Keegan said in the last segment, taking your timeouts when you need to take them. So I think that if there was that distrust there, and again, it might just come from unfamiliarity with each other. And so to me, that is probably more of why you see that decision made more than anything. And I don't know why again, but to me, I think trust was probably a big issue. And it doesn't mean that either side is a bad person. When you don't have a rapport with someone, that makes it tough.
Absolutely. And Kyle, I guess we've got to get back to what we brought you on here for, man, because we'll waste your entire segment if not. But big time weekend coming up for the Indiana Cagers, man.
Yeah, it should be a fun weekend. A good way to end it. Chesterton and Cathedral, I think, is probably the obviously the 4A game, and people looking forward to seeing that. I'll have actually finished the story on the 2 point guards, the seniors who lead those teams, and Tayshawn Comer from Cathedral. He's going to Eastern Kentucky, and then Travis Grayson. I don't know if many people know him. They should, because he is a fantastic. I got a chance to spend some time on the phone with him this week, and his dad and his coach, and he's fantastic. And both those guys are. And I know Tayshawn pretty well from covering him over the years. And him and Leland Walker, I think, are going to do great things at Eastern Kentucky next year, starting next year. But both those guys, seniors, they're when you talk to them, it's like talking to adults. They're just really good players and good citizens, good to talk to. So I'll have a story kind of combining the two of them a little bit together in a story, but each have their own somewhat similar story, kind of, looked over in recruiting because they're a little bit smaller. Both had to kind of learn how to play point guard, started as freshmen, but had journeys to get where they are now, kind of learning to play within a system. And both of them had, family members who are real with them, and TJ Comer, Tayshawn's brother, he played football at Marion University, but he trained him since he was little, and talked to him a little bit too about that. And I think any teenage boy especially needs people to not kissing their butts, but really kind of tell them what they need to do. And having two myself, I know how important that is. So but both those guys have had family members in their lives, basically. And I hope people read that story. It'll, I think, come out tomorrow morning. But enjoyed writing that one probably more than I have any story here recently. But looking forward to seeing those two play. And there's a lot of good games on. Four good, I think, matchups. Interesting. It's Catholic school versus public school in every game this year. So first time I've ever seen that before. I think first time it's ever happened. But yeah, that's sort of an interesting sidebar to Saturday. But I think all four matchups are pretty good ones.
And then in the 4A, you've got an undefeated Chesterton team. They're trying to complete an undefeated season, which would be pretty special for them because there's not a lot of teams that can make that distinction. And you can't say that while they didn't play in the MIC or this or that or whatever, when you get to the tournament, you got to play teams. And playing a team like a Cathedral for the state championship, that would solidify that to me in anyone's mind, or it should.
Oh yeah, and there's no doubt anymore about what they've accomplished. 29-0, they beat Homestead early in the year. I think that's the game that kind of tipped everybody off to how good this team can be. They beat Fletcher Lawyer and that group up at I think it was at Grace College in December, and then they weren't even ranked. They weren't even receiving votes in the preseason poll. So that shows you how far Chesterton has come. They were a good team last year, 16-7, but didn't have much buzz about them until that win. And then, I think they've been number one since early January, I want to say, and have held that spot ever since. And they've beaten some good teams along the way. They had to beat Valparaiso late in the year, and then Valparaiso got beat in the sectional, so they didn't have to see them again, but beat a good Merrillville team. They beat Penn, which was really playing well in the regional final, and then took down a Kokomo team that, with Flory Badunga, who, to me, he's a Big Ten player. He's only a sophomore, but he'll be a name we'll be talking about in the future, writing about. But they took down him in the semi-state and beat Kokomo 42-40, which I think a lot of people had thought Kokomo was going to win that game. So at this point, Chesterton is not an underdog. They're the real deal. They can beat Cathedral, I think, if they play well. And I'm going to pick Cathedral to win, I think, but I don't think it's any, it's no Cinderella story at this point, what they've accomplished.
Mr. Basketball race changed a little bit throughout the end of this tournament run, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we saw, Fletcher Lawyer, just mentioned him. He won the Gatorade Player of the Year I think it was last week. So, I don't know if that will help hurt. It won't hurt certainly, but I don't know how much that helps necessarily. Probably doesn't. If someone's on the fence, maybe that name recognition helps, I would say. And if I was probably picking, I would say he might be still the leader, but I would say Braden Smith from Westfield, with the sectional he had, I mean, he helped himself, certainly, basically playing on a broken foot that's going to need surgery. And he's, I think, certainly in that mix. I think these two guys I just mentioned, Tayshawn Comer from Cathedral and Travis Grayson from Chesterton, should get some support for that. And then there's another guy, Connor Esigian, who I wrote about last week. He's at Central Noble. He'll be playing in the 2A game, and he's going to Wisconsin. He's number 10 now all time in scoring in the state of Indiana. And if you're top 10 in the state of Indiana, you're among some pretty big time names. And people will have a chance to see him on TV. I think they play at 12:30 on Saturday afternoon in the 2A game. So he'll get a chance to get in the spotlight a little bit more for people who haven't seen him. And I think, he goes out and has a good game, he'll probably get some more votes, I would think. So, I don't think it's clear, cut and dry. Like I said, I think maybe Lawyer Smith still at the top there, but guys like Esigian and Grayson and Comer, I think, still have a chance to make an impression.
Why doesn't CJ Gunn get a little bit more mention? I know that they went out of the tournament, but he had a tremendous coming off of an injury, comes right in the first game back. He has 18 fourth quarter points and just had an unbelievable season personally, at least. I'm surprised he doesn't get a little bit more talk.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned him too. I mean, I think he is one who will get some support. I think what hurt him is that injury to start the season. He missed a few games, and not unlike Braden Smith, who missed a few games too later in the season, actually. But I think what probably hurts Gunn a little bit is that he didn't have the sectional title, and although I think he does get credit for Lawrence North won the last two sectional titles. He was actually hurt in his sophomore year, and that team, because of the pandemic, didn't get a chance to advance anyway. But he played a big role last year on a team that made it to the state finals, and he was not not always the top scorer on that. That was a more balanced team with Shamar Avance and DJ Hughes and him, who was kind of a three-headed monster. And then McCulley, who's playing football at IU now, he was a big-time rebounder for that team. But CJ's got a lot of wins. I mean, I think if you put his total resume together, I think that helps him. I think what hurts him, though, and he had a phenomenal, the sectional game he played against Warren Central. He was about as in the zone as I've seen a player this season. It just had a phenomenal game in that one. But I think not winning the sectional will sometimes that makes a difference. And I think, that will obviously didn't help him this year that they weren't able to get through, but he played really well. You're right. I mean, played really well on a pretty young team this year.
So this is your big weekend, man. You get to take a little time off after this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have our honors teams and stuff next week, and Mr. Basketball stuff will be, probably not next week, but the week after, and some all-state stuff. The top 60 workout is on Sunday, so I'm going to try to head over to that for a little bit too. But yeah, I mean, it's a full day, but yeah, their state finals are a fun way to end it for me. There's definitely busier days, I would say, but it's a fun day to see some of these kids you've covered for a long time. They get a chance to get their share of the spotlight and see if they can finish it off the right way. And I always know my season ends on the state final, basically, for covering games anyway. But it's fun to see how some of these kids are going to get a chance to grab that ring, and it's not a lot of teams get to do that at this point in the year. So it's always a fun way to end it.
Absolutely. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Cannot thank you enough as always. Make sure you give him a follow and be a subscriber. I am. Keep local papers alive. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Jim. See you, Dustin.
You bet. We're back with plenty more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at BB's Market, your local meat shop. You're also a caterer. Get whatever you want. You can order online. Go in and look at this place, man. It is phenomenal. You ever been down to Odin? That's what this is like, but possibly better. BB's Market, Bakers and Butchers. Hey, we're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
An Evansville tradition for more than...
Shoot, I just played the wrong ad. I'm better to do something a little funky real quick.
You have sandwich.
Andy Moore Honda is...
That's an edit for me later, but whatever. So, Dustin, I'm assuming you've got some, well, maybe you don't have time off. You're just spending time in Indiana, even though you're working.
What's that?
I was going to say, I guess you have some time off right now, but no, you're just working from Indiana right now.
Yes, I did not take my first vacation will be in May. I'm going down to Jekyll Island with my brother, and then we're going to play some golf, going to hit the beach, do some camping.
I'm so glad. I mentioned earlier the trips we got coming up. Haven't been on really. So we went on a trip with my parents, siblings during COVID, but that's obviously not the same thing as going on your own vacation, you know?
Right. Well, for me, it is our my mom and her excuse me. Mom and stepdad are going, but I mean, my brother and I pretty much do our own thing when we're. So it'll be fun. I haven't had a vacation in a while, so. And then I usually take another one in early to mid-July to get that last break before the start of football season.
Before everything gets into high gear.
Yeah, I usually try to go. Usually the week after the 4th of July, try to take 4 or 5 days. We'll see. I'd like to go up to the mountain, but they've been booked this year.
What's your favorite hiking spot in the U.S. that you've been to?
Oh, well, most of them are in Georgia. My favorite is actually Cloudland Canyon, which is right up. It's basically in Chattanooga. But my buddy lives in Nashville, and we'll meet up and we'll go hiking in Chattanooga or Cloudland Canyon. And I mean, it's beautiful. They got a lot of waterfalls. Just really good trails. My goal is to do 12 new hikes this year.
This year? Once a month?
Well, I mean, I try to hike at least once every other week, but there's Kennesaw Mountain is like right, like a 10-minute drive from my house. So I go there pretty frequently just to get something new one. So I'm going to see if I can find one here that I can go on. And then Do some in Georgia, and Jekyll Island's got some, so I should be able to hit it. I'm currently at 2, so I'm 1 behind.
Shoot, did we already run out of time? Man, I'm losing it this morning. All right, we're coming back.
This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition as well. Well, Indiana will be looking for a new assistant coach, as you've heard us talk about. Andy says the new hire will absolutely be a recruiter who already has connections and ties. I would say that would be a need for certain. Jesse asks, could Thad Mata move around anywhere within the program now? I'd assume he doesn't want that. I don't think he's not physically able. He's not physically able to go out and recruit. And he's a desk job. I mean, that's about all you can say about that. I mentioned this earlier. Kenneth says Keith Smart would be his first call. That's not a bad call. I mean, he's obviously someone that is he's won a collegiate game as a coach, first of all. Mm-hmm. He's coached in the NBA, but he's also coached at the collegiate level. And he's done so as an assistant, which I think is incredibly smart because now he's not just any, he's been under Eric Musselman, who has had success at Arkansas. He had to fill in for Musselman, won a game as an assistant, understands completely how the college game is run. So I think that would be a great call. It was actually my first thought. But there are other people. Like if you're thinking IU, like I said, we talked about earlier, AJ Moye, who is a more into player development. But where he goes, I don't know. It's going to be. He doesn't have, I shouldn't say the contacts, Dustin, but it's not like he's used to reaching out to talk to people. He didn't have to hire any of his assistants, right. Not except for Yasir, who was brought in, and he probably was brought in on the recommendation of one of these other Kenya Hunter or someone along those lines. It will be interesting to see which direction they go, though.
I think Mike Woodson's going to do, like I said, when it comes down to trust, I think Mike Woodson's probably going to go with somebody he knows or has a relationship with. I don't know what his Rolodex looks like in terms of the number of coaches he's going to reach out to. But don't you have to think he's got, before you make that decision in my head, if I'm a head coach, I have a couple names in mind of people that I think would be interested and would be good fits before I make that kind of decision. That would be my guess, but I don't know that for a fact.
Well, let's hear them.
Well, I don't have anybody in mind. I mean,
well, I thought you said that you did.
No. If I was a head coach, I would have 3 or 4 names that I knew would be interested.
Always.
Yes.
That's one thing that I learned listening to the former assistant or former AD Tom Jurich at Louisville, and you can say what you want about him. I don't care. He was a hell of an AD, but that's what he did. He was an AD. I think Scott Dolson is going to be a great AD for Indiana. Don't get me wrong. But anyway, he always had a list. That's the thing, because you always have a list. Always. And you have to always update that list. And that's the same here. But this time, Mike Woodson's going to say, this is what I need. He's a year into the job and say, hey, I feel bad for Dane Fife, for one. He was kind of put into a bad position. And Sid hits us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline, said, so disappointing. IU basketball did not need this. What a mess. 1 year, and firing an assistant coach who played there makes IU look inept. Sad. It's not a good look. I will agree with you. It's like infighting. It's like infighting. It's like infighting. But I mean, Dane Fife is one of the favorite players, although not an from Indiana guy, but it doesn't matter. I get it. It just looks like a little. It's not a great look. It's just not a great look.
Let me ask, if it wasn't Dane Fife, are we talking about it? I mean, okay, let me rephrase it. If it wasn't Dane Fife, are we talking about it in that same context? Does it look sad? I don't think so. So I take that out.
If it was a former IU player, yes. It's the fact that it's a former IU player.
Okay.
Not that it's just Dane Fife. It's the fact that it is a former IU player who was brought in because so much was made of the IU thing.
Right.
Got to get the IU guys. Well, you bring him in after 9 years at which I'll be honest with you, I was a little surprised. I did not. He's not who I thought was going to come in. But after learning what I learned after the tournament last year, Michael Lewis telling me he's not leaving he's not leaving LA for anything other than a head coaching job. And I get it. Here's exactly why. Here's exactly why.
Yep. I have a comment about what you were talking about. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's all right. What if he had uprooted his family and brought him all across for this job? And now, Dane's kids, he was having to convert them to IU fans. They grew up Michigan State fans. And now they're like, what the hell was that about?
And they're going back to East Lansing.
So that probably, yes. So there's that. I feel sorry for the Fife family. I really do. But that's unfortunately a sad part of this business. It's not like he's leaving a pauper. He will be paid for his entire. Well, they'll work something out too. I guarantee you, he's not leaving empty-handed. Was making nearly double what he was making as an assistant previously. So, and it sucks, but it is what it is.
I understand the aspect of it not looking good, and like you said, looking infighting. But I think if you take that element out of it, if you just look at it from the outside looking in, let's take the Indiana element out of it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, this happens all the time. A coach decides, this isn't going to work for me. It happens. I understand the part. I don't think it makes Indiana look inept. I legitimately don't. I think you make the best decision for your program, and sometimes those are hard decisions to make. Doesn't matter what sport it is. So I think if you take that Indiana element out of it, if it's not Dane Fife, if it's not a former Indiana player, I don't think it looks nearly as bad as what people might make it out to be. I just don't think it's that big of a deal, because this is, like you said, it's the nature of the business. It sucks, but it's part of the business.
I made the comment yesterday that the way that fans are reacting, it's like daddy hits mommy at the dinner table. That's kind of the vibe that I get from.
Wow.
Because you have two former IU players and you create this thing in your head that there's friction. It could be artificial friction, but that's kind of the vibe that I saw from reactors yesterday.
Well, we'll see. Here's one from Andy that said Xavier Johnson absolutely developed. I disagree with that. He didn't develop. He got his head out of his ass. That's to me, there's a big difference between taking your head out of your ass and developing. He didn't develop. He's a senior, man. He is a senior. He did not develop. He started playing to his capabilities at the end of the season because he got caught breaking curfew and suspended and damn near derailed the entire team's season. And then he started playing well. That's not development. Development would have been slowly getting better also. That didn't happen. He just, boom, turned it on and began doing what he needed to have been doing all season long, in my opinion.
It would have been.
I disagree that was development.
It would have been interesting to see what this Indiana team could have done if they would have played with a sense of urgency, like what they played with in the Big Ten tournament all throughout the course of the season.
Yes. Trace Jackson Davis, how much has he developed? Where's that right-handed capabilities and the 15-foot jump shot? Did not materialize. How much did Tamar Bates develop this season? I mean, Jordan Geronimo, he was important, but how much did he really develop this season? I mean, those are just questions, but I'm not sure that I saw a ton of what I would call development.
I don't think so either. I agree with you. And I don't think, again, I'm not going to put that on Mike Woodson because of the off season and everything. So I think you have to give that another year to see, at least another year to see what he can do. But I just saw a team. I don't think it was a team that you saw all of a sudden Trace Jackson Davis could do things he couldn't, or Xavier Johnson do things he couldn't. I think it was a sense of urgency, a sense of if we don't play well and win, our season's over. And that, to me, that was more of what it was than anything else.
Five Live says Woody said that he was going to really work on the team's deficiencies in player development this offseason. Well, why weren't they doing it during the season?
Because that's not when you develop players. You have to do.
Well, you have to be. It has to. To me, it has to be an ongoing thing, nonstop. You don't quit during the season.
Well, but a lot of that time, it's got to be on players themselves.
I understand.
But the players have to take that on their own, and
I agree with that.
I mean, I've had coaches tell me, all throughout. It's one of the things that's preached in Indiana, and it's always stuck with me. Players are made in the summer, teams are built during the season, and I think that applies here. I think, again, because everything was so. Mike Woodson takes the job in, what was it? Was it March or April of last year? Whatever the date was, I don't remember. He takes the job. You got to learn recruiting. You got to learn your team. You got to recruit the portal. To me, there wasn't a lot of time there to get that development factor in. Now, he did have some time there, obviously, but that's why I say I think that this year is going to be huge. I think you're going to see the players that stick around this program from last season we're going to find out how good of a developer Mike Woodson is. We're going to find out what could players do this season, and now what can they do next season, because he now understands what he has to do, recruiting, transfer portal, all that stuff. He knows to get to work. Didn't he say he was going to make all the players watch all their games or something along those lines? So they can work on
every game.
I think that's a big deal. And so that's why I say the development aspect for me during the season isn't as big of a deal, because you're doing so much on the run. And Jim, to be honest with you, when this team kind of trusted itself, they played really well. When they trusted each other, they played really well. There was that skid. Again, I think things really changed after that Northwestern game, and it took some time for that trust to come back. I think there were a lot of emotions about those players breaking curfew, doing something stupid that put their chances of the NCAA tournament at risk. But once they got that trust back, they played to the first 20, 21 games of the season and the last 5 or 6 games of the season looked really good. It was that middle 8 to 10 game stretch where it was really bad. And I know that they lost some games, Syracuse, Penn State, scattered throughout that they should have won. But that also is that sometimes that's just basketball. You're going to lose games that you should win.
Here's another good point from Andy. He's way more concerned with the consultant aspect that he incorporates with his NBA guys, using them as his main tactical advice, gives it as a slap in the face to your actual assistants. Well, not only that, but what are you trying to do here? Which one? And so I think there's some confusing. So, hey, we got to take a break. It's that time. We got plenty more coming back. Don't forget our friends at Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. If you're having problems sleeping, snoring, just a little device like this fits right in your mouth. It's incredible. Brian Evans and Steve Evans, former Hoosiers, are up there with that. Aurora Specialty SleepClinic.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting... Man, that one went quick.
Yeah, it did.
Hello, Chris. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's up, guys? How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, I saw that break when I was yesterday, the whole Fife thing when I was driving down to the game.
And that did happen right about 3:30, 4 o'clock, didn't it?
Yeah, I had I flicked over GMV. I was talking to Rab Johns and I just thought he was talking to Rab Johns just about general IU stuff, and then I heard him talk about that, and I was like, "Whoa!" What do you think Fife does? Does Fife get right back in?
Will he get right back in?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he had a multi-year deal, right? I'm sure he gets.
He's not going to be hurting.
No.
Indiana, that's another thing. Indiana is not going to hurt him because he was a former player, but at the same time, here again, they're putting themselves financially. Well, I guess maybe the Archie. I wonder, did Archie Miller being hired help, because this saved him about $3 million?
Oh yeah, I'm sure he had an offset agreement. Yeah, usually, and you know, every contract's different, but I'm guessing that this year they wouldn't push you to find a job, but usually it's the next year. I mean, you're supposed, you know, right. So I'm guessing it did save them money because of the offset.
Well, it saves about $3 million, I think, is what that overall savings was, which will help offset the Dane Fife $400,000 a year paycheck until he finds another job.
What do you, I mean? I'm sure Fife had to sign about a 3 to 5 year deal, don't you think?
I would imagine, yes. I would say it was probably pretty close to the length of Woody's.
Yeah.
You think it was 6? Usually those assistants that do 2 to 3 deals with a rollover 1-year contract, so they just extend it by a year.
Yeah, I just think they might have done something different with him, though.
They might have.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you have Mata down there in a associate AD role.
That's another $400K per year.
I'm just saying, if I got fired from a job and you paid me not to work, I'm not going to find a job until that contract is up.
Especially when you were making almost double what you were making in your previous job.
That speaks to their competitiveness, though. It's just insane how competitive these guys are to want to jump back in so quickly. Whew.
Well, he would have to if he wanted to be a head coach. You can't stay out of the game for 4 years and jump back in.
That's true.
Right, here we go.
Voted the best jewelry store 9 years in a row by Evansville Living Magazine and the Readers, located at the corner of Green River Road and the Lloyd Expressway, or online at brinkersjewelers.com.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Thursday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends at RE/MAX Realty. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Joined now by our good friend Chris Denari from the Indiana Pacers. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Just a quick night. It's a second out of a back-to-back, so Memphis tonight. As Dustin and I will talk, I mean, find another way to lose a game last night.
1 point from a 3-game winning streak, man.
Yeah, 0.2 seconds. But it all started. Pacers had a 1-point lead. Buddy Hield got the ball, and you felt good because he's a good free throw shooter. You think he's going to get fouled, and he just lost the ball out of bounds. And then Trey Lyles, Indiana, Mr. Basketball, missed a shot, but Damian Jones was right in front of the rim and laid it in with 0.2. And with 0.2, all you can do is throw it at the rim, and the Pacers weren't able to do that. So, yeah, disappointing loss. I know Buddy Hield and Tyrese Halliburton were very disappointed. They're playing against their former team. But you look out on the floor, and the Pacers didn't have Jalen Smith. He was ill. Isaiah Jackson, who was coming back from concussion protocol, did not play in the second half. You had 9 players. I mean, it's been that kind of year, and I guess it was that kind of loss. The Pacers are now 3-14 in games decided by 3 points or less. And they've played as many clutch games as anybody in the NBA. They just have the poorest winning percentage. So they somehow found another way to lose a game last night, and that's what happened in Indianapolis.
It's kind of interesting to watch this unfold through social media. And I'm not this kind of person, Chris, but I want to see I want to see him win out. I like when my team wins. I can't get on board, but it's interesting to watch how quickly this changed from a lot of the things I saw on social media where the tanking gods are with the Pacers right now because of how they lost that game. I mean, we're at this stage where, to me, again, there are no guarantees with the lottery. You don't know it just because you finish low. I understand they want a high draft pick, but to me, I'm with you. I want to see this team win. It's a disappointing loss, but I also get the other side of it where at this stage in the game, do the losses actually help the future of your franchise?
Yeah, you're going to have a good draft pick. And again, when you get into the lottery, can you get into the top 4? Does somebody from 13 move in front? They are going to have, in my opinion, the best draft pick that they've had in over 30 years. So that's going to happen in June. You're going to have Cleveland's first-round draft pick, provided they continue to make the playoffs. And you're going to have Houston's you're going to have their second pick, which is going to be 31, 32, 33. So you have a chance to have 3 picks in the top 33. What you do with those, if you take them all, if you use them to package, we'll just have to wait and see. But I'm in agreement with you, Dustin. I think it's important for this new core. And again, not all of them, I'm sure, will be with the Pacers next year. You want to learn how to win. You want to have success. You want to know I can count on my teammate when things get tough. Now, you looked out there last night. You did not have Malcolm Brogdon. He was out for a second straight game. They're resting him because of that Achilles. You've not had Miles Turner for 2 months. So those are 2 of your starters. So it's just interesting. But I like to see guys compete, and we have not had that problem at all. This group, no matter who's been on the floor, no matter how many players they've had, I mean, they compete till the very end. You just want to see a group like that moving forward have success, because I think that helps build things for next year.
And the thing that I always look for with this too, Chris, and again, I've said this multiple times on this show, and we've talked about this in the past. To me, when you look at the injury situation, there's always almost a silver lining. You know the kind of player Miles Turner is. You know who Malcolm Brogdon is. You know who some of these other guys are. The opportunity for some of these other players to get a chance to show what they can do, and whether or not the Pacers want to up their contract, re-sign them, whether they're going to be on the trading block. I think at this stage in the season, when you're not in the playoff hunt, and as you said, you're already going to lock up a really good draft pick, that kind of gives you an idea then of what you're going to do in the offseason. Maybe a better idea than if all these guys were healthy, because you need those, as we've seen. To me, I don't think the super team model is dead, but at the same time, we saw Milwaukee win an NBA championship. We've seen the Raptors with Kawhi Leonard. The super team is not necessarily the way to go. If you have all the key role pieces, yeah, you need that one superstar type player, but you can win an NBA championship, or you can make a deep playoff run without having a 3 superstar lineup.
Yeah, and I think you're right. When you look at what the Pacers have been able to do and see, somebody like Dwayne Washington. Now, a lot of college basketball fans knew about Dwayne at Ohio State, but when he got to the NBA on a 2-way contract, he was probably only going to play a handful of games when the season started, because you thought you'd be more healthy than you were, and you probably didn't think at the time that you would make the trade that you made at the trade deadline. But yet here we are. Dwayne Washington Jr. has scored in double figures 22 times of his 40-plus games. He's on a streak of 9 straight in double figures. He's shooting, 38, 39% from three-point range. He has shown that he has a place in this league, and I think he has a place on this Pacers roster. Now, moving forward, he may not play the same type of minutes that he's playing right now, but to your point, now the Pacers have been able to see him. They've been able to assess him, and it's a lot different than when you are playing every 5 or 6 games, and you're getting late minutes in the final 4 minutes when the game's either a blowout in your favor or the opponent's favor. So I would agree with you, Dustin. I think that's been the positive that's come out of this for the Pacers, is they've been able to look at players and identify their strengths and their weaknesses and see how they can help them moving forward.
And one of the things that I think in today's NBA you have to be able to do is obviously shoot the 3 ball really well. I want your take on this because you're sitting courtside for those games. You're calling every game. But I look, and I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but do you think moving into next season, and depending on who's back, but you look at Tyrese Halliburton, you just mentioned Dwayne Washington, Buddy Hield, is there potential for this to be one of the better 3-point shooting teams the Pacers have had in the last 7-8 years maybe?
Well, I think the one thing is, prior to the trade deadline, I think it was January, they were dead last in 3-point shooting. Mm-hmm. And since the trade deadline, by acquiring Halliburton and Hield and even adding Jalen Smith, who's been nearly a 40% 3-point shooter, they've been top 8 since the trade deadline, and that's about a 17 or 18 game stretch. So it is enough to see moving forward. And also Dwayne Washington has shot the 3 pretty well. So I do think, with Hield and with Halliburton, if you look at their numbers from the past and project those going forward, and then, some pieces you may add or guys having better years from 3-point range, yes, I think this should be a top 10 3-point shooting team. And I think if you do that on a more consistent basis, you will definitely win more games.
And you look at tonight's matchup against a really good Memphis team, and you catch them on the second night of a back-to-back. I mean, what do the Grizzlies bring to the floor? What are the Pacers going to have to do to try to stay competitive in this one?
Well, last week they got blitzkrieg by Memphis. They got beat by 30+, and they did it without Ja Morant. They won last night in the first night of a back-to-back, a home back-to-back. They won at home, national television, ESPN. They beat Brooklyn. Brooklyn had Kyrie. They had Durant. Kyrie went for 30+. I think Kyrie went for 40+. Durant went for 30+. And without Ja Morant, who was out with an injury, Memphis won. They're 15-2 without Morant. That shows you how deep their talent pool is. Desmond Bane played at TCU. He's from Richmond. Jaren Jackson Jr. Played at La Lumiere, but he played at Park Tudor. I think won a state championship at Park Tudor. So it's a very talented team, a young team. And if you're Indiana, you sort of look at them as what you hope to do. Remember, they were the grit and grind team. They had Mike Conley and Zach Randolph, and they beat you by being physical and playing a slow down brand of basketball. That got old. They retooled through the draft. They brought all these young guys in. And that's sort of what the Pacers are looking at. I think they did a good job with the draft last year with Duarte, Jackson, and Washington. They need to have a good draft this year. And I think Memphis has shown that you can turn it around pretty quickly. So we will see one of the most talented teams in the league. They're second in the Western Conference. They got their 50th win last night. I'm just looking down. They went 22 wins, 33 wins, 34 wins, and 38 wins last year, and they're at 50 this year. So it does show you can take a young team, may take a couple of years to germinate, but once it does, boy, you are hard to be stopped.
And I think that's what kind of makes this whole thing fun, right, Chris? It's not the results you want on the floor this year, but I think also there's a lot to be said for it. It's been a while. The Pacers kind of stuck with that and stubborn. I'll call it stubborn with what they had for a couple of years. And, we've talked about they weren't good and it was kind of a boring brand of basketball. Now they're more exciting. You look at what they can do through the draft. You look at the pieces they have there. And I think that this is a team that you don't expect them to be, you don't know from a year-to-year basis, but you don't necessarily expect them to be in the playoffs next year. But watching this, Philadelphia coined the term the process, and watching a team kind of grow and take those next steps. Again, I go back a decade when the Pacers first made their NBA playoffs, and that was kind of the spark that led them to, a couple straight Eastern Conference championship appearances against the Miami Heat. I think that when you look at how, we've talked about before, the Phoenix Suns, the Memphis Grizzlies, even to some extent Philadelphia, I think that that's what the exciting aspect of this is down the final, 10, 11 games here. And then moving into next season is, while it's rough now, I think that there's a bright future ahead, assuming that you can get a lot of these guys to stick around.
Well, and I was listening to you guys before you went to the commercial break, and Jim, you're talking about IU, and sports. There's no off season anymore for your respective sport, right? If you look at the NFL, the NBA, college basketball now with the transfer portal, it's a 24/7, 12-month-a-year process, and that I find with the NBA, I enjoy it. I enjoy following the off season and the trade deadline and the drafts and all that. And we're now seeing that in college basketball and college football. If you have to pay attention to your favorite sport 12 months a year, there is no off time. I know you know that, Jim. You're following the recruiting game with IU and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's no off time anymore for your favorite sport.
No, for anything, even go down to kids. It's year round. If they're a basketball player, they're year round, man. They are training for the high school season. After high school's over, now you're training for AAU. You go into that. Your travel staff, it does. Everything is year round now, and so yeah, you're right. It's just nonstop. And but I guess that I don't know if that makes it fun or not, to be honest with you, because I sure do miss those times off. When you didn't have to think about nonstop, but now it's nonstop thinking about it and being afraid to. That's why I don't like taking days off, John.
I have to admit that I love watching. I love watching summer league. Like there's you got baseball on usually in the evening or a few afternoon games, but that's like I don't know. There's just something about seeing players get their first opportunity at the NBA and it being there. I've always enjoyed watching the summer league. Now I'm not sitting there on the edge of my seat watching every game, but it's something I have, while I'm working, I have it on. I if the Pacers are playing, I watch a game. It's so interesting and fun to me because there's in that it's more than just the game, right? It's what does this guy do well? It's who's shooting the three ball. And then you see usually an assistant coach is taking the reins or something to that degree. So you get a feel for coaching style too. It's just, I love the year-round stuff, even though I know it's a lot more work for a lot of people in the business.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no question. No question about that. I'm the same way with Summer League. I guess the good thing about it, you can watch development and not worry about the wins and losses. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's up next for you, man? You guys, next
Memphis
game
tonight.
up?
Yeah, Memphis tonight, Toronto on Saturday, Atlanta on Monday, Denver on Wednesday. So if you look at the next four games, they're very difficult, and who knows who's going to be available tonight. I mean, Isaiah Jackson did not play in the second half. He was coming in off concussion protocol. Tyrese Halliburton was questionable yesterday with a sore lower back. I think that's going to be the biggest thing is who is available tonight for the Pacers. And again, you're out of the playoff hunt. You're just trying to see development. So that takes a little bit of the pressure off, right? I mean, for me, it's sort of like watching Summer League because I'm watching these individual performances knowing that it's going to help build the future. And you're not all knotted up with, what's going to happen in the game. I mean, I want the Pacers to win. We talked about that. I think that's important for these guys going forward. But I think just as important right now is the skill development and making them better for the future.
And the other part of that too, just real quick, is to me also, Chris, is the fact that when you're in this situation, you also don't want to. If a guy's hurt, you don't want to play him. It's not worth it at this stage in the game.
No, and I think that's why you're not seeing Miles Turner back. And
right.
I don't know if he'll play the final 9 games or not, but I'm sure they've assessed it and said, you know what? We know what we have in Miles. We'd sure like to see him with this group. Same thing with Chris Duarte. He's been bothered by that sore left big toe. That gives you a lot of problems. Why put somebody out there that could jeopardize next year? So I totally agree with you.
Well, hopefully the Pacers can stay on the winning track somewhat. You don't want to get them too far out of their draft spot. It's that fine line. But, man, again, we talk about they are a program that does not tank, man. They just keep on playing. And the fact that they were a 1 point away from a 3-game winning streak shows that should show anybody that they are playing and trying to win.
Yep. I mean, it's hard to believe. I mean, that's sort of the sad thing, Jim and Dustin, when you think about it. We were 1 game away from a 3-game winning streak for only the second time this year. That's sort of how the season has been. So, 9 games left, just moving forward. And again, I'm really excited about the future. I've been very pleased. Hats off to the fans. I mean, the environment at the field house has still been very, very good. I think people understand what's going on and how this team is building for the future.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you, Chris Denari from Indiana Pacers, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat. We'll see you again next week. Hey, we got more coming up here, brought to you by our good friends from RE/MAX Realty. Don't forget, reach out, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com, and her 2 decades of experience if you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting Bloomington.
All right. One more segment.
Man, it's gone fast.
As it usually does.
Oh.
For a minute the other day, Dustin, my brain started to shift into football mode, and I was like, no, not yet. It's too early to be thinking about college football.
Well, we've covered – usually my mind is in football all year round, but we've started covering more basketball, and so I'm a little distant from it at the moment. That'll change in about 2 weeks. But
that's true. It is crazy how it all comes full circle, because really right when – and maybe even before, I don't know all of the team schedules, but right when the Final Four is over with, spring football is in full swing.
Yeah, I think that's intentional.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I know it is. It's just interesting how there's zero off season for anything anymore, like you all were talking about.
Yep.
What were you saying?
I said I think that a lot of places, I think a lot of schools do that intentionally.
Oh yeah.
Although Missouri already had their spring game though.
Why did I hear somebody told me, I don't remember who it was, that Indiana wasn't doing a spring game this year? That doesn't make sense, right?
No, I'm pretty sure they are.
Why would they not do one?
Isn't it on a Friday night?
I just heard Jim yell something. I don't know if he was responding to us or not, but
no spring game to my knowledge.
Let me see. I'm gonna do a little lookup. Or is it closed maybe? Like not open to the public kind of thing?
Maybe.
No spring game to my knowledge.
I'm looking at something right now to see.
That seems very odd of Tom Allen.
Nope. Not after last season.
Well, what does that matter?
What does that have to do with anything? No one comes to spring games regardless of how well they are. Well, they do.
Well, they used to do them on Friday night. I think it was Friday nights, and then Indiana did, and then that gives you some exposure on Big Ten Network.
Well, who knows? Maybe they won't have one. Seems kind of silly to not do one regardless, but who knows? Here we go.
We're now a part of the Rivals Network. The Hoosier.com is where you can find complete coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and plenty more. Simply go to thehoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you on this Thursday from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Jim Coyle with you as always, and joined by the newly sculpted Dustin Schutte.
Sculpted. I like it.
Freshly coiffed without a coif.
Also known as Charlie Brown. Look a little Charlie Brown-esque here with the round head, and at least I don't have the Cooley curls or whatever they're called on the top of my head.
Andy says he's way more concerned with the consultant aspect Woody incorporated with his NBA guys, using them as his main tactical advice. We said this in the last one, gives a slap in the face to your actual assistants. If that is the case, yes. And like I said, I saw that going on as well. I was around it. I don't know what happens in the meetings. I don't know what happens behind closed doors. But, I'm going to guess that, that seems to be the case. But, again, all speculative. Nobody knows. Because they're not going to come out and say it specifically. I don't care who they are. I don't care what writer it is that you're talking about. They don't know either. They're not in there any more than I am. And I can speculate as well as they can. But it's just that. And that's pretty much what it will remain for the most part. And it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you.
No.
It's just time to move on.
Right.
What's next? Who's next? Who are they going to bring in? What are they going to do? My concern now is, if from a fan standpoint, I would think the fan standpoint is, who are they bringing in? Where are they going? What's the direction? What are you doing with development? What is your plan with development? You got all these people on salary and staff, whether it's Mata, whether it's, I don't know that Randy Whitman's on being paid, but he's there all the time. The NBA guys that are his consultants, a lot of people. Well, who's doing what is what I'd really like to know. Who's actually developing? Who's working on guys with shots? Who's doing this? Who's doing what? I'm a little curious because there's just a lot of people with a lot of titles costing a lot of money. And I just wonder, what are they doing? Who's doing what? Whose responsibilities are what? I don't think that's too much to ask, to be honest with you.
Do we ever really know?
No, but
okay.
it's more of a question now because most programs don't have this many people involved on a staff. This is more of a staff. It's more of a posse.
Well, the thing is to me, I don't know who said this, but it was definitely on your show, and it was last year. So I'm going to refer to it, and I apologize because I don't know who made the comment. Maybe it was you. Everybody says what a great hire Juwan Howard made when he hired Phil Martelli to be the assistant coach. And I agree. But do you know what Phil Martelli does?
Cashes a check.
Oh, but in terms of what his role on that staff is, does anybody know other than Juwan Howard or the players?
His official role on the staff was basically
but my point is you don't know. Right?
I don't know what if it's written down, but I know what it's supposed to have been. I know what his role was supposed to have been. It was because Juwan had zero college coaching experience. He had zero coaching experience. Really? Okay. I mean, as a head coach, Phil Martelli had like 25 years as a head coach in college. St. So Joseph's. That's what it was supposed to be. It was not supposed to be, a big deal, but just to help him. And it probably did because it probably helped them make the tournament because he won 2 out of 5 games that Juwan was suspended for.
Right. It did. Correct. Yeah, that really paid off. Although, that's not why you bring somebody on staff, but no. I don't think that's again, maybe we're just going to disagree on this, but I think you're going to find out who does what in terms of the development side, the recruiting side this offseason, because it's a little bit more fluid now that everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what they're going to be doing. I mean, Mike Woodson probably doesn't make this change unless he has somebody in mind for a very specific job that he wants done, whether that's developing talent, whether that's more being more prominent on the recruiting trail. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think you're going to have more defined roles on the staff, and I think that that's going to translate to off-season development. And I could be completely wrong on that. I just think with everything that goes on in the first year for a head coach, especially when you bring in a head coach who has no college coaching experience and has to learn everything from the ground up, it makes a big difference.
Let's see. Kenneth says Trace apparently moved up in some draft listings. Also, what about the Adidas news yesterday? I guess I missed that with all the other stuff that was going on.
There's something about NIL. Adidas, I think, is creating some sort of NIL platform or something where all of the student athletes that are associated with an Adidas school can make money. But I don't know. I didn't read the full story, so I don't have the specifics on it. But it's something along those lines.
Which is along the lines of what Hoosiers for Good is doing. Also, one of the things, that's Fred Glass and his 24 sports one athlete mindset, which is crap. I'll be flat honest with you. It's a load of crap. But that's kind of what Indiana's trying to do as well. So they'll add to that. I mean, they're going to get money from Adidas. They'll use it just for that. Exactly. To help spread that out. But don't kid yourself. The main goal is to get the guys they need to get for the sports that they need to get them for.
Right.
Do not fool yourself into buying any of this other crap that it's for everybody. Yeah, it is. But that's not the reason. That if they're doing that, it's kind of hard to crack on them. Well, this guy's making $1 million. Well, it's tough. But that's how it's going to have to be. That's just life, man. I'm so sick and tired of hearing, well, there's going to be dissension on the team. If this guy, really? What professional team is the number 1 guy making the same as the number 13 guy? Right. None. Not even close. In what walk of life is the president of a company making the same as the guy down on the line? None. Not in any walk of life. So why in the freaking heck do you all expect it to be that way here? It's not. That's not real life. So that's the goal, is to be able to do that. Along the way, they're going to be able to spread the love, which is great, which is fine. But the goal is to get the guys they need to get. Period.
I really wish we had more time in this show because the NIL stuff, oh my gosh, it's going to be.
Come on any day and we could talk about it every day. I wish you were here every day.
Because I mean, I could go off, but I sent something out about it. I mean, to make a long story short, because I know we got to wrap it up. If the NCAA would have approved of jersey sales, giving kids a cut of the EA Sports video game, allowing autograph sessions, some of these other things, the little steps along the way, we would be in a much better spot, and you wouldn't see Texas A&M or some of these other programs spending millions of dollars to get these recruits. I mean, that's where we're at. And you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, so it's going to be part of life now.
Yep, it is there, man. I guess that means we're out of time. Gosh, darn it. We still got 2.5 minutes. So
wrap up in like a minute, though, because you always go way over with the new intro. Just saying.
All right. Outro. All right already. It's like there's so much more to talk about. But yeah, I mean, there was a discussion going on back here. Let's see, 5 less getting on here now, but we got why are they talking about the next coach? The next assistant coach, out of curiosity, if that's what you mean. Now I'm behind on these comments, so I'm Golly, so I hate that. So I can't get in on the discussion. That's IU to pay Fife $375 out the door. I don't know unless that's a fact. We'll see if that is the case. I'm reading some of the comments now that are here, but well, we'll have to continue this discussion tomorrow, man. You're welcome to join it at any time. Slick. That's just instead of spicy shooty now, it's slick shooty, baby.
That's right.
Slick.
Looking good.
Slick. Got that
Showing
slick hair. Man, you got that summer cut going. Golf. Probably
gonna break the internet.
It's gonna be hard to wear a visor with that cut though.
I know. I haven't worn a hat since I shaved, so
well, you gotta toughen up that scalp.
That's right, I do.
Toughen up the scalp, man. Hey, another great time today. So much fun. Gotta thank everybody, of course, Keegan. That came on with us from thehoosier.com, Keegan Nickoson. Make sure you go give him a follow and follow him at thehoosier.com, Indiana Rivals. Also, who all did we have on today besides Chris Denari was also on?
And Kyle
Neddenriep, of course, on the Indy Star. Make sure you give him a follow as well as he's wrapping up the Indiana High School basketball tournament this weekend, because that will wrap up. And, of course, our good friend Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, our good friend. And, man, like I said, you're welcome to come back and discuss it anytime, baby, because that's what we do. Love it. But most importantly, thanks, John, the producer. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we don't have a reason to be here. We'll be back here tomorrow because I'm sure there's going to be plenty more to talk about. We'll be right here. Don't forget the courtroom down in Bedford as well. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports